It looks more of a media scare campaign on the surface for me, actually coming out here and seeing this versus just digesting what's given to you, and how much of it's AI as well is the question. One thing that's going to amplify is food pricing, because the fertilizer shortage is the only real thing that I've seen out of this. The rest of this is scare headlines, just trying to get you to get ready for working at home again or not driving or whatever. That's just all subset A. But what's the real deal, the elephant in the room, is the fertilizers just not being produced, and that is gigantically huge for crops. So if we don't have the fertilizer, we don't have abundant foods. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are on the beautiful blue planet we call our Earth here. Going to be running solo with you for just a couple minutes. Probably going to do about an hour today. I'm in Asia. If you haven't seen the background's a little bit different. Just going to be you and me sitting here chatting about Asian fuel disruptions, fertilizer disruptions, and what you're seeing in the news might not be exactly real. And I'm over in Taiwan, and we were hearing in the news, oh, there's shortages all over Asia because Taiwan's 90% reliant on fuel from the Middle East, but in reality, it's 30%. That's the first bit of conflated information. And then I arrive here from the airport, driving down the highways, it was around rush hour, business as usual, nothing changed. Fuel prices went up 15%. And in America, it's even higher. We went up like 23, 24% so far. There's no restrictions on driving on the road. They're not calling or making or asking anybody to work from home. No restrictions on cars in the cities, as you're hearing. So, I'm looking at this saying, what's real? Because what we're getting fed in the news in America is not really the reality on the ground out here. So a friend of mine, Michael, he's up in Japan right now with his wife, and I've been talking back and forth with him. We both saw this X article that showed a picture saying Japan fuel petrol stations, gas stations are out of fuel. They had a big old sign up there that said, "We're out of fuel, thanks, Trump." Now, if you wouldn't have known that, you would think that was sweeping through Japan. Like that was, so he's been driving, he's in Southern Islands here, around Okinawa, and then going north. So they've been driving for 3 straight days around, and he is specifically looking for out of petrol, signs in front of the stations. Hasn't seen one yet. No restrictions into Tokyo, no restrictions in Japan for driving, but they're like really 90% reliant on fuels coming from the Middle East. So again, like what you would expect through the American news is, oh, it's shutting down in Japan. There's nothing, you can't drive, it's collapsing. But when you get here and others that are up there in Japan and myself in Taiwan, it's just not. So again, what is going on with this? They're trying to call for, get it again, we're going to work from home. You're going to be restricted on how many days you can drive. They're trying to consolidate store hours again. It's almost like COVID 2.0, but we've been trained once before. Some countries like Vietnam, they're calling for work from home, although they have offshore oil fields. Everywhere you look, there's just a bizarreness of everything that's happening. So I was diving really deeply into the Australian fuel shortages. I'll bring you a bunch of charts tonight. I've been just scouring the news. So here's the thing in Australia. The whole news in the world is Australia closed petrol stations. They're not having any fuel. So I delved into it. 47 stations out of 7,700 didn't have fuel. But again, the world news headline would make you appear as if Australia is completely shut down. But yeah, they're looking into Australia. You would think that they're going to have to walk to the supermarkets. It's not like that. So then the juggling of information too. There is and are some stations that don't have diesel fuel. And there are some stations that don't have like gasoline. And there's some stations, they all have the ethanol blend. But what they're referring to with not having gasoline is the 100% gas. The 100% gas, you got to search around in America too. Not every station has it. So, they're juggling these half-truths. They are truths, but they're sort of like the way they mix them together, it makes it appear as a larger disruption. New numbers out of Washington show inflation is on the rise again. Another threat to you, your savings account, and your retirement. Ask yourself an honest question. Does your dollar go as far as it did 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or even last year? What does the next decade look like for you and your savings? If your portfolio lacks exposure to gold, one of history's most reliable economic hedges, it's time to rethink your strategy. Gold has kept up with inflation and in many periods outpaced it. My friends at Noble Gold Investments specialize in helping people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver. Whether you're rolling over an IRA or making a direct purchase, their team walks you through the entire process and makes it simple. No pressure, just education and experience. And the limited time offer March bonus, get a 1/10th ounce gold American Eagle coin for new qualified accounts. Visit 2030gold.com and discover how easy it is to protect your financial future. That's 2030gold.com. Click on that link in the description box below. Yeah, this gas station is out of 100% gas. They have all the other blends, 95, 93, 89, ethanol blend at 15%. Still a plenty to go around. Some stations that are way hell out in the outback don't have diesel fuel because they couldn't get the deliveries out there. Oh, they're out of diesel in Australia. The most remote stations in the outback have run out of diesel. Coastal, like in New South Wales, if you're down on the beaches somewhere, you're in, down in South Australia, you're at Melbourne, they're not running out of fuel. They haven't. The media is portraying this that it's just some sort of calamity that's closing down the entire planet. New Zealand, I saw this really incredible, and I mean mind-blowing API that showed you in real time imports coming in. I mean, you got to check this. It's all over Twitter if you want to find X. You can find the API to jump into New Zealand fuel. They got a big countdown clock like a nuclear weapon going on, 28 days, 9 minutes, 7 seconds. And then they show you the projections. If there's fuel rationing and nobody's driving, you can extend out the fuel and they'll show you how many days of what type of jet fuel, diesel, petrol. But as it looks more of a media scare campaign on the surface for me, actually coming out here and seeing this versus just digesting what's given to you, and how much of it's AI as well as the question. I paid $5.50 for diesel today. Where are you? Please tell us. That's $5 a gallon. That was Biden time most of the time anyway. So why is it so scary now? We had to deal with that for 4 years, and suddenly today it's scary that we had, $3.95, $4 gas. Well, we had it for 4 straight years before, and then it came down, and now because it's back up, it's a travesty. It's a nightmare. It's a ending scenario for our world. Oh wait, you forgot 4 years ago how terrible it was too. Remember all those signs on the gas stations pointing, going, I did that? Biden's picture. $4 gas was common. $5, $6 diesel was common. So, it is part of the plan they're talking about. You keep hearing about this end of the decade goals that people are trying to reach and achieve. Well, right now, the big thing is trying to scare you from air travel. So a bunch of news stories are coming out saying, Philippines says international flights have to bring their own fuel to get back to wherever they flew from because they don't have enough aviation fuel, gas for the airplane, to get you out to send you back. So inter-Asia, that's pretty easy. They just load the fuel. They just load the plane with extra fuel to come, drop people off, and fly back to Japan, Taiwan, Korea, wherever you're going, China. But the way that they're phrasing it is, you fly in, you're stuck forever. Don't fly. Like this is another big one here that they're waiting to, this whole trickle over of not going to drive, you're not going to fly. We're going to tell you when you can leave your house. You're only going to be able to drive a certain number of days. All based on this. The world is ending sort of global oil shutdown thing. But what I'm seeing, it's not exactly like that. So what you're going to be forced to do is they have to portray it as such a huge global thing happening. It's something different going on. A lot of it's just news hyped up. But if it does start to get to a trajectory where it goes off a cliff, I'll absolutely tell you. But for right now, we're being played again. Let's go over to here to Buy Me a Coffee. See who's jumped in on us. Thank you so much for your support. We're going to be doing just 1 hour tonight. I need to run off and do some things myself here. Time change. It's the middle of the day. It's noon, or sorry, it's 10 a.m. approximately. So we're starting at 10 a.m. Someone buys us a double espresso. Thank you so much. Silver Creek, good time to buy some silver. It is, but I read this bevy of articles from this off Al Jazeera specifically. In their economy section, they had a bunch of analysts that are through Abu Dhabi, where else? The Bahrain and a few other places talking about the sovereign wealth funds right now in the Middle East need to sell a huge amount of gold to try to cover some of their expenses that are now cut off because they're not able to sell the oil. They have heaps of treasury bonds. They have heaps of gold. They're selling it to cover the expenses. Now, I did have an article clued up here. And here's another one off Zero Hedge. Severely curbed. Gold shipments through Dubai stalled because of the Iranian strike. So the airport's closed. So huge amount of gold shipments move through Dubai, but apparently they are disrupted at the moment. Everything going to Switzerland, Hong Kong, and India out of Dubai for gold has been cut off. Usually that transshipment point where a lot of gold moves across the planet, that's kind of locked in right now. But because these nations are able to move and they have gold in other parts of the world, they can make a telephone call and say, move 6 tons to the left, give us the cash, we need to pay somebody. All right, so that's the reason that gold's being hammered right now. And silver prices are being hammered by the banks because gold's getting hit too. Like I was watching Gerald Celente, listening to him earlier today. And he was saying, as well as many other, like David Morgan, silver guy, you know who he is, Andy Schechtman, silver guy, also, if you follow him, that we should be at about $500 for an ounce of silver, but because of the artificial suppression in the markets, that this illegal activity of suppressing markets is allowed to go on. But with the sell-off of Middle Eastern countries trying to at least get some workable money, because the U.S. is denying some of their conversions to dollars to be able to use that, believe it or not. So the whole deal is we give them military protection. The oil goes, they buy our treasury bonds, we hold the treasury bonds, and they have that as a reserve for emergency cash. And then they take a lot of that and then put it into our stock market, which is an infinite circle jerk that makes it look like our stock market's continuously going up, but it's continuously money from the Gulf Coast countries there that are taking their oil profits, spinning some off into gold, some into treasuries, and then spinning that cash into our stock market. But then they often buy and sell and take their profits. So it's just this infinite money glitch that's going on. Now, when it rewinds like that, when it unwinds, these countries are calling, saying, yo, America, we need our treasury bills because we need to sell them. We need cash. And America is telling them no. Because so many of these Gulf Coast countries right now want to sell hundreds of billions of dollars of bonds because they need the money. America told them no. Now what happens? So after this thing finishes, I really believe a lot of these countries that previously trusted the word of our government that we would hold your bonds for you and we would access to your money at any time are going to absolutely go in a different direction after this. Right now, they're denied swapping the bonds for cash. So they're back over to using their gold to swap out for dollars to be able to pay some of their whatever needs are. They're paying extremely expensive price to get foods in right now. They're air shipping food into Dubai because they can't come by ship. So you know how expensive that is. They're bringing like 80,000 pounds of food on an airplane every few minutes in there because they're going around the naval blockade. So far, so good. Nothing's happened to the air shipments. But you can see what the cost of that is tremendous. And they got all these sailors stuck out on the ships that are running out of food. You know, these ships come in, they're going to be out at sea for like, let's say 6 weeks, 8 weeks. They got enough food and water for that time. But they're getting locked in there. They're already at the 5th week of being just stuck in port. Another 3 or 4 weeks, and then their food starts to get lean. So any of those Mideast countries need to supply now the crews on the boats with food because they themselves don't have and no way to replenish. Because normally they'll go into a different port, stock up again, right? That's not happening. So all those ships stuck on the other side of the Hormuz Strait there, they're running out of food and water because they're only provisioned for, a certain amount of voyage time. So these Gulf Coast countries are like, thank you for doing that. We will try to provide you food and water. So hey, bring in more airplanes. We need to feed the sailors on the oil tankers kind of thing, or on the mineral, breakbulk cargo ships, this type of thing. So it's getting to this money loop here. This is why a lot of gold and silver is getting smashed off. And at the same time, because it's going down, our Western, American banks are hammering on top of that. So it's going to go down first before it bounces up. But I saw silver above 70 again today. It was around 68. Someone, love and respect, thank you for that. Joe Burbine, double espresso, thank you. Speaking with family in the Philippines today, they said unable to sell the tomatoes. We were talking about that last week and we ran out of time. They were saying that they were unable to sell the tomato crop, and other farmers were only getting like 5 pesos a kilo or 12 cents Canadian per kilo. And Canadian, or the growers were just dumping them. And I was saying, that's going to go up in pricing for food pretty quick here. And maybe they can get a higher value stream of that if somebody was to set up like a makeshift factory and turn those tomatoes into something like tomato paste, and somebody could can it, get a higher value of that instead of wasting it. But I'm just curious, today the price of tomatoes in the Philippines is probably double what it was. But again, what is the news telling us about the Philippines? You're going to fly there and get stuck. Where you land is where you stick. Fuel rationing starting, but I can't confirm that. All they have are these repeated articles, the regurgitated copy-paste articles of a Philippine aviation minister or something saying international flights need to bring enough fuel to get out of here. We can't refuel you. Yet they're still offering package tours down to the Philippines to fly down there for a holiday right now. Go figure. It is information warfare at its finest right now. So let's see what else we got here. Let's see, read a couple of comments as we're going. Where's David tonight? In Taipei, Taiwan. That's actually morning for me. I gave everybody 2 ounces recently. Also found 2 $100 bills yesterday. Yeah, keep it coming, man. Keep that that love of money and the grind of the thankfulness. You find silver on the floor there. Let me see if I can grind you down to a chart here or two. This is where it gets kind of interesting for me. All right, so this is what the IEA is telling us is coming. This is the International Energy Agency. Alternate day car access in big cities, meaning if you have if you have an even or an odd license plate, your car is only allowed in the city on that day. Now, other places, one license plate every 5 days into the city. Let's steer through a few of these here. Let's see if I can find oil shocks. Encourage public transportation use. They want you to go to public transport away from cars, but that was already at the end of the decade plan anyway, wasn't it? Switch to alternative modern cooking solutions. Okay, i.e. electricity, because they want you to free up the LPG from transport, if you can see my mouse there. LNG is force majeure out of everywhere in the Middle East. Natural gas is not coming. Half the tankers are stuck on the other side of Hormuz Strait anyway, they can't come out. This side, there's no loading ports anymore. They've been destroyed, and those can take years to come back. Instantly, Asia pivoted and they turned on their coal-burning power plants, like just in seconds after that happened. The problem was the idiocy of the West. They blew theirs up in Australia, destroyed them all. Remember, we kept seeing Germany, oh, they blew up their old nuke plants. Oh, they blew up the old, coal-fired stations. Oh, we don't need them anymore. Just blow them, recycle the metal, and let's put up a windmill or something. So in the West, we pretty much destroyed any backup. Over in Asia, they're like, we've seen this happen. We're not going to do that right now. Boom, they just turned back on their coal-burning power plants, and they're back up running again without the LNG. Thailand did it. Cambodia did it. China did it in just a moment's notice. So I'm sure Indonesia is going to be on the same there because they were having some problems with their LNG imports as well. They don't care what they burn either. See, it's not about the quality of coal anymore. It's about giving electricity to the people so they don't overthrow the government. So they're going to be burning, I don't know, peat moss if they have to. It doesn't matter, we're in an emergency, so whatever gets burned for electricity. Like the optimum coal, obviously, is going to be, I mean, if you could go the high, but anthracite, that's more for like smelting metals and sort of thing. But the bituminous coal, and there's different grades of that, generally you're trying to remove the sulfur out of that and get the least sulfur you can in those grades of coal. A lot of it comes from Indo, so they're going to be set as jet. They're huge coal exporters. You start to look at these countries that can turn back on their power plants, and they're the ones that are coal producers anyway. They're going back 20 years, 25 years. They're just going to go right from the mine with the train straight to the power plant. Like they're not going to be affected electrically as much as the West, where they blew up all of our plants. There's nowhere to go back to. Only forward with wind and solar. That's it. LPG, and also the natural gas we need for fertilizer, and this is a big one. If you've seen the last video from yesterday, I talked about natural gas disruptions and fertilizer prices going up and maybe crop yields down, but undetermined how much down, at least 20% for now. And the bottom right there, if you see where it says avoid air travel. But wait, we heard that was kind of the end of the decade goal as well. You're only going to fly once a year. So I start to see a lot of these things lining up here. They wanted us to go away from using any kind of gas for cooking because they can't turn off natural gas. They can turn off your electricity. Electric cars, they can turn off your electric car. They can't turn off your gas-powered vehicle from 1970. When they talk about alternate car day access to big cities, those days with the newer vehicles, they're just going to lock your vehicle so you can't even start it. That was the danger talked about anyway with these brand new vehicles that were all satellite tracked and everything new and computerized and touch screeny this and that. It can be remotely turned off. Governments working in tandem with private companies for a certain day, just, okay, no cars in the city on Tuesday. All these companies along with governments just need to press one button and no car starts. The only ones start are like my old one that actually had clunky things that turn and, there's some computer parts in it. It's not pre-1979, but still it would start. Like it can't be remotely turned off. That was the whole thing a lot of people were looking for. That was a big purchase thing. That's why the price of a lot of these older cars went up the last few years, is people clued in like, if I don't get an older model, I'm only going to get stuck with an automobile they can turn off remotely. That's why there was this huge push to anything not pre-1979 that had nothing in the computer parts and the EMP threat as well. Only your battery would fry, nothing else. So there was a huge rush to all those cars. Millions of people in America went to go buy those, so it kept the used car prices up. But that was just, smart thinking ahead. I want to buy a vehicle that can't be remotely switched off. But here we sit today and the same thing. Now they're calling for this all across Asia. And how many cars are brand new that they can press a button and whoosh, turn off? Lower highway speed limits. And then work from home when possible. Work from home when possible. The IEA, notice their graphic is very different when they put it in a written form. What's number one that pops up? Work from home. But wait, it would take a lot of time to train people. All we need to do is flip a switch and everybody got trained during COVID. Work from home, how easy was that? 2.0 in your face right now. Encourage public transport, number 3 on the list here. So if they reduce the amount of days you can drive a car in, they're going to force people into public transport. Like you either go to work or you go to shop or you don't go at all on public transport, right? You see, there's going to be no second choice in different parts of the world. In America, that's going to be a real hard sell because where's your closest supermarket? 15 miles away. Like that's not going to work. There's no buses out where you live. Okay, that's a hard sell. Nobody rides public transpo, barely even downtown. Even the subways, hardly anybody takes in their crime-ridden hellholes of just like crime underground in a tube. Like nobody really wants to deal with that. So most people prefer to stay away. It's going to be real difficult to try to get that in America to work. Other places, though, it can. Alternate private car access to roads in large cities. So they're going to rotate the number plates. Some countries do A, B, C, D, odd, even. And number 8, avoiding air travel. They're trying to constrict air travel right now. But again, that was the end of the decade goal too. You're going to travel less once a year. That's already baked in the cake. Like I look at this and I start, this is more like a checklist for the end of the decade of all those plans they had. At least 5 of them are on here as these things move forward with what we're seeing. So I kind of put that together as a clean one-to-one. Now, do you believe that this is down in Australia? Is this an AI generated image? Because every one of those out of order signs is the exact same written. Now notice how it is. Like that's a handwritten sign. Do you think it's photocopied? Somebody wrote out of order, and then it looks like every one of those is hand drawn with a marker for me, because the photocopy would look a little bit different. In my opinion, I've seen a lot of photocopies of like scribbled handwritten stuff. So for me, it looks like a copy paste off an AI rendering, but I wish I could see the price on this screen to see if it was exactly the same price of 80, whatever, 802 something. Because you have to be discerning when you're looking through a lot of these images here. So is this a news generated story? Because again, coming to Australia, it doesn't seem as what we see is what we're getting. So this is an Asia oil dependency supply crisis visualization, and I am in the middle of the disruption, and I don't see a disruption. That's what I'm saying. This is the map of all maps that keeps getting shown everywhere. India's 9 days of fuel left. And I was watching Marion Newfall, one of my faves, and he was watching a few of these Indian analysts. So I started following these guys in India that analyze fuel. And they were saying, wait, well, hold on. Even these Indian fuel analysts are like, whoa, India is the 5th largest refiner on the planet of fuel. How can we only have 9 days of fuel left? So the guys in India are like, well, we have vast stockpiles, just tremendous amounts of fuel around the country. How could there only be 9 days of fuel left? So the guys who actually in the industry that know about, refineries and fuel distribution, this sort of thing, were asking the same questions like, how is this even possible? Unless it was a government disruption to move that fuel over to government first and then just give the public some scraps, basically. Boiled it down to that's the only possible way this could happen. Government siphoning all the fuel and just leaving a little bit for the public at the moment. So they broke it down. 5th largest refining capacity on the planet is in India. So like something's very wrong if that's true. They couldn't define it either. Like we don't understand the 9 days. Like where did that number come from? Because they're looking over, they started talking about these different places like Hyderabad and even up in Himachal Pradesh, they had an oil storage facility up there going up to the base of Himalayan mountains outside Delhi, going to the north. They were in Bihar, had some places. They were out west. Where was that? Rajasthan. They were talking about all the oil storage facilities in Rajasthan, and they were just breaking it down. And like that's literally impossible. So this map, I was just taking a look. South Korea, 50 days of fuel. They're the first ones, little rollover puppies. Yes, pet me on the head. Oh, we're going to make everybody work from home. And I'll bring you some slides on Korea. Just jumped up and said, yes, sir, instantly about all these end of the decade goals and went right into it without even a single question, which makes me question what's going on in South Korea. Japan, again, these numbers are, Japan government said they had 245 days of fuel. But now all these reports are coming out saying they lied. They only have 95 days of fuel. I got a person up there driving around helping me look for petrol stations closed, can't find a single one. Now, if they had 95 days of fuel left, that's 3 months. There would be way more restrictions going on in Japan at the moment. Like they would be closing that country down. Nope. Seems to be, I wouldn't say business as usual, but very close to it. So I start to look here and say, all right, there are some disruptions, don't get me wrong, but they're saying Singapore is dangerously close to running out of fuel. And I sit there and I scratch my head and go, Singapore is one of the largest transshipment hubs on the planet. Coming through Malacca Strait, every oil tanker goes through there. How in the hell is it even possible that they could be remotely running out of fuel? A, it's a small nation. B, they have access to the world's fuel running through their strait right there. And Malaysia just on the other side. Also huge, vast, gigantic, unbelievably large oil storage facilities just across the border from Singapore. So I look at these maps and some of this just doesn't make sense. But if you hadn't been out here and hadn't traveled around and know some of these transit points, and like if you looked at this and put it in perspective, like you might think all of this is just face value, what it is. But I am absolutely unequivocally saying, I mean, you watch the channel, I'm straight shooting, try to be as much as I can, give you the real info. We're in some sort of mind operation at the moment. This is not real, what you're seeing. It is to a part. Don't get me wrong. A portion of it's correct. There are some disruptions, things are getting higher, but it's not this all-encompassing end of the world scenario they're giving you in the news. Like what I saw before I left America, I was looking at Asia going, oh my God, this thing is collapsing in real time. There's no fuel. What the? And I get here and there's like nothing happening. So just be discerning on what the fuel is trying, or what the news is trying to show you over there. I don't know anybody who wouldn't want to work from home. If you do need to work from home, please get seeds so you can plant your own garden. Like if they're going to make you work at home, use the time every morning to work on your garden, grow your own food. It's coming into springtime. That's a big thing. They're going to, the hoops and hurdles that I can foresee in the future to get into supermarkets. Fertilizer shortages are real. That's the most real thing that I can see so far, is the fertilizers aren't making it out. And I know some guys out across the grow belts, and they are really telling me that they're struggling to get the fertilizers. It's expensive, and people are just not going to plant because they're not going to break even. Even Danny down at Deep South Homestead, he can tell you a little bit about fertilizer and his pricing, and he's not going to plant some because the fertilizer is just out of range already. So these are real people on the ground that are not going to be planting. And through the Midwest Grow Belt, if they don't break even, unless our government starts to subsidize the hell out of them, they're not going to plant this year because they're going to lose money. Now, who would work that hard? Farming is difficult work. It's not easy. Who would work that hard, that long to lose money, knowing that when you went into it, you would lose money before you even planted? Nobody. That would be insanity to do that. Government's going to have to come up and put some massive subsidies on and pay these farmers a tremendous amount over the price so they would go out and plant the food. Otherwise, most farmers are just going to sit back and go, because fertilizer went up $77 a ton just in 1 week. That's an example of what's on the ground. $77 in a week. Natural gas, these idiots blew up the world's largest natural gas pipeline outbound. So 30% of the world's natural gas has been destroyed on a way to bring it out to the rest of the world. If that's not a planned disruption for food to like cause chaos, I don't know what is. Like blowing up an oil pipeline or blowing up a port that had some, okay, there's 50 other of those that can substitute it, right? Not every oil refinery and every oil storage facility in the Middle East is blown up. There's been a handful. Makes the news, but it's not every one. I assure you it's not every one. There's hundreds of them. Probably got like 10 blown up. They make good for good news footage. Oh, look at the flames. Everything's big. Okay. But what did get smashed was the natural gas hub out of Qatar. That is 30% of the natural gas on the planet rolling through there. That is disrupting fertilizer production. And the fertilizer producers in that area have also had their fertilizer plants demolished. So for me, they're going for the food. They're going for the energy a little bit, but they've destroyed 30% of the world's fertilizer production. Like, not coming back for decades. It takes a long time to build those out. That has been purposely destroyed over there first and foremost before any of the oil refineries. And what I don't get, if this is an all-out war, and I just want to, game it out with you, there's this east-west pipeline that goes across Saudi Arabia and it pops out on the Red Sea. You can load oil tankers over there. So currently that pipeline is running 5 million barrels a day across Saudi Arabia, and they're loading in the Red Sea, and then they go to the Suez Canal and pop out or whatever. If it was truly a war, you think Iran would have destroyed that pipeline and stopped oil flow out of the Middle East, and then they could control the straits and be like, this is the real one. But these things that are allowing the safety relief valve seem to be undestroyed, unchecked. They're not even messed with. But the thing that got hit the biggest and worst was the fertilizer production for the planet. Everything else is still moving. There's oil around, but the natural gas, they took out our fertilizer supply. That's what not a lot of people are talking about. And that's a big one that's going to really drive up the food price this year. So some of the analysis, when 1% reduction in fertilizer application means a 1% reduction in crop yield. Some guys are talking about only applying 50% this year, so that 50% crop yield of normal. Food pricing, just everywhere you look, increases in fertilizer translate into this much food in cost. And there's a lot of different equations they were using to try to determine food inputs. I'll hit a couple here for you I got. Or did I do it last video? I've been doing so much research, kind of my head's spinning. South Korea just announced mandatory fuel rationing. Okay, I'm digging through the news over there. This is coming from their government spokesperson. I don't see it in the news. I hear this guy talking about it, but I don't see it on the front pages over there going fuel rationing coming in. What I did hear about was the spinning of the license plates where you're only allowed to drive in 1 day per week now. That's on their news. It truly is on the news, but the words fuel rationing is not in the main news. You can go over to Korean Times. There's a bunch of English language Korean newspapers. Just dive through there and see what's on the front page. If it was fuel rationing, that would be a front page article. What is in the front page is they're going to be stopping government vehicles, not you and me, public, government vehicles from coming into the cities. Again, look at the headline, read this with me. What does it tell you? And if you read this real quick, you go fuel rationing. Oh, you can only bring your car in the city 1 day a week. Oh my gosh, what's going on over there? But it's government vehicles at public institutions only that are not going to be able to bring their cars in. It's clever, but it's true, but it's written to be misleading, even though it is true. I encourage you to go to the Korean Times, take a look yourself. Jump over there, see what's happening. What I did see through some what you consider like National Enquirer newspapers, see the Bigfoot, see the UFO kind of headlines at the supermarket checkout is the same stuff they're showing you here. Nationwide energy saving, take shorter showers. That is not going to save energy. That energy, those electrons are flowing in the lines, whether you take a shorter shower or you don't. The electrons are vibrating up there. They're not going to stop because you took a shorter shower. They're not going to pull back and go, all right, I'm not going to move. David took a shorter shower, I'm going to stay right here. That doesn't work like that. That power is continuously generated, continuously at the line, Magnetic field's always there. Electrons are always moving back and forth. It doesn't cut. You have to actually literally cut the source before that even makes sense that it would save energy. Ride bicycles. Charge your phones and electric vehicles at night. Now this makes a little sense because you're off peak hours. Okay, that does make a little sliver of sense there. Vietnam Trade Ministry reported, let employees work from home. Now this one for me is a little interesting because if you know anything about Vietnam, they all ride motorbikes. A predominant amount of people ride motorbikes to go to work. Probably 80%, I would say, motorbikes, mopeds, motorbikes. They don't even want people riding motorbikes to go to work because that's too much use of fuels in the country. So Vietnam's already saying work from home to reduce fuel use. FYI, Vietnam has offshore oil fields, and that's highly contested with China. China's all down there, South China Sea with their 9-dash line going, hey, wait, that thing that's like 2,000 miles from our coastline, we get that oil. They're like, yo, bro, we can see it from here. Like if I look out, I can see the oil field platform off the beach. And China's trying to claim that some 2,000 miles away, 1,800 miles away. So that 9-dash line, like China thinks everything around with water is it. Might as not. 12-dash line goes to the moon. China thinks they own the moon too. Oh, 27-dash line, we own Hawaii. So Vietnam does have offshore oil fields. So I'm just, why would they not couple up with a few of these other nations? Like Thailand has refineries. There's an oil pipeline network system through Southeast Asia. And I don't understand why the producers can't get oil down to some of these refineries of the same grades and then start to work together in cooperation instead of Vietnam exporting it, putting it on a ship and sailing it across the ocean somewhere. Why don't they send it by pipe down to Thailand to refine it and get back refined product? Like a lot of things are totally mismatched. Like we're in a time where things might need to be rethought. The old way of business apparently needs to be rethought right now. Why don't we use, this is so insane. They'll pump the oil into a ship in Vietnam. These whole trade negotiations and trade deals need to be rethought. Everything needs to be regionalized again. There's oil production all over Southeast Asia. Malaysia, huge oil producer. Indonesia, OMG, it's one of the biggest on the planet. Yet there's fuel disruptions and fuel shortages in the biggest oil producers in Southeast Asia. Again, this just does not make sense to me. How the oil producers are not having energy. But I digress. COVID gave us a hybrid work week. Iran war might give us a 4-day work week. And this time experts say it could stick permanently. Check the box, end of the decade goal met right here. People are going to work from home. They're going to work less. UBI coming in for you hot. So again, I would say food prices are going to go up, not because of the fuel disruptions, although they're going to milk that like a cow, like a 10-ton cow. Diesel prices go up. We need to charge you more for that truck to move from one point to another. We need to charge you more money. You got to pay more for the grocery store. Must. It's an emergency. But at the same time, the real elephant in the room, deflecting from other things in America, are the fertilizer shortages. This is the super biggest deal that nobody talks about. They're all focused on the oil. The real disruption is the fertilizer. The elephant in the room is you don't get the same amount of food out of a field if you don't have the fertilizer. And 30% of the world's fertilizer is offline as of this week. We only have 70% of fertilizer for the whole world that we had last year. And that's barely getting any news headlines except in the agricultural news where the guys are now starting to go, getting expensive and I'm not planting at a loss. Soon you will start to hear about this as we get into the planting season more in, I would say late May, early June. You'll start to hear about this on the mainstream. But for now, a little bit distant early warning on that because it's only ag news. Again, the Philippines pushing, don't fly. You're going to get stuck in the Philippines. We don't have enough fuel to fuel the planes. If you come here, you might get stuck here. That is the new messaging. Of course, you couldn't fly. Now, on to New Zealand. This is, like I said, the most incredible dashboard I have ever seen. That's a no BS assessment. I've seen a lot of like informational dashboards in my day. This one blows every one of those out of the water. Like, you don't remember when Null School came out and the Earth Wind Map and you had never seen anything like it and it was so new and you're like, oh, wow, this is something that's like space age, Star Trek kind. This dashboard for national fuel usage out of New Zealand is exactly the same. You can find it anywhere. Just go national, just put New Zealand fuel dashboard real time and you'll find it off any search engine. But what do you notice though? Countdown timer, 42 days until they're out of fuel. No more fuel's coming. It's almost like one of those scary movies. The island's cut off. There's 42 days. And it's very much like that. But the supply projections are really well done here. So you can see since that time, they've continuously decreased in fuel imports. They're dropping off a cliff as of this week. And the different scenarios show you how much fuel they're going to have left in terms of the line. So the purple line is if they ration everybody heavy and they make everybody stay home and nobody can use fuel except for emergencies, ambulances, firefighting, military. That'll be the purple line and it'll get them fuel all the way through, like, let's say the end of April. If they keep going as is, they will run out of fuel April 17. And that is for diesel fuel. So if you look at the top, you can see where it says diesel. So they go by a different type of fuel when they're doing this. So New Zealand is going to start rationing. But again, I don't see where it says military in there anywhere, do you? Government is not in there. The fuel is going to militaries and governments first. They're stockpiling right now because they know there's a problem. The crumbs left over for the public is the rest of this. Just saying. And everything's all color-based, you know. Green, emergency. Yellow, very almost emergency. Blue, cooler. Government rationing 25%, and then red is no baseline. See, they reversed it from the COVID colors, if you notice that. Same colors, but just reversed in the psychology. Green good. Oh, wait, green bad this time. Green 40% lockdown. Red, no intervention. Just keep using like you want to. So you notice a little bit different, but I'm looking at the pricing here. I don't know if you can see the pricing. Let me zoom some of this out and see if you can see the price on this. Okay, so on the fuel intervention on emergency lockdown, if it goes to this point it's going to be $4.80 per liter. And for those of you in the United States, that's 4 liters for a gallon. So at this price, at nearly $5 a gallon, or $5 a liter, excuse me, the price for fuel on the emergency lockdowns, if they don't get any more in, will be nearly $19 a gallon for fuel in New Zealand. You don't have an economy at that point. You just don't. Is this real or is it Memorex is the question. Because I look at a lot of this, and those guys over in India were trying to explain it. The only possible way they could be running out of fuel in India is if the government is hoarding all the fuel first and giving it out to the public second. That whatever their military or their industries are hoarding all the fuel coming in. But they're still giving some out, not to do a total stoppage, but a slowdown out. You serfs, peons, you just get the rest of what we want to give you. We're keeping everything. That was the analysis, and I thought it was quite well done. And then, to hear it once, I was like, that's interesting. But then to see it multiple times from different analysts over there saying the same exact thing, I was thinking, all right, well, maybe there's some validity to that then. So if we're looking at the projections for just petrol, like just regular gasoline, the purple line, if they extend it out, can go into like second week of May. If they don't, they'll run out of fuel, say in mid-April, just a little bit after. So they can get a full month of extra fuel. And at that time, they hope that things come on back line. So their thing is to outweight the war, I guess. So if they start rationing, they can stretch their fuel supply 1 month to the end or the middle of May by making nobody drive, only emergency conservation, and that's it. Work from home again. We've already been taught how to do that. It was so convenient, and we already learned how to do this, and they snap a finger and it turns on again, and this goes live the same day. Work from home, nobody's driving, emergency measures, and we're going to stretch the fuel supply for a month. You could never have done that had there not been COVID. People would be confused. I don't know what work from home is. Everybody's got their cameras. Everybody got their little set up behind them. Nothing new. Okay, move Johnny out of the way. Johnny, you go sleep with your sister or whatever. Johnny don't need no room. Get a little private room. Get out of here. It's an emergency. We need the office. We need the work from home office again. And a lot of these stories here, this is all Bangkok Post out of Thailand. If you want to go check it out. So I'm trying to give you some English language newspapers that I've been following that are just the standards. If you want to, like in Hong Kong, there's a huge amount of South China Morning Post. That's a great one for if you're looking for Hong Kong-based news. Singapore, everything's in English in Singapore. You can find a bunch. Indonesia, Jakarta Post. That's a good one to look at. This one is just the Bangkok Post out of Thailand. Again, you can look at, there's several different. Taipei Times is a good one here for Taiwan. Japan Times is another one good up. And there's just a huge amount of English language newspapers for Asia. So just start delving through those and click on it and just look at the front news headlines, and you'll see if it's really that tremendously collapse. It would be all over. Every single headline on the front page would be about fuel, but it's not. There's still happy little concerts going on. Oh, this little famous person's here. Don't worry about driving. No, it's just famous person's here. Go to the concert. I'd be like, what? Okay. I thought it was a fuel emergency. On to Thailand, fuel prices at petrol stations soar by 6 baht. That's 20% increase. They're looking around 33 baht per liter. And again, the exchange rate somewhere around 30 for a dollar. So their gasoline's approaching $5 a gallon. 6 baht is, our American fuel prices have increased more than that. So since the beginning of this, our fuel prices have gone up almost 35% in America. They're only maybe a 20% increase in Thailand. So, you just put it in balance. They got the better deal than we did because they're only going up 20%. Taiwan here went up 15%. They're only half of what America went up. So they're, again, the rupee's kind of high on the exchange rate anyway, but five rupees a liter, and people are complaining at 5 rupees. You tell me, would a 7 or 8% rise in fuel decimate the economy? Well, things are way worse off than they're telling you in the news headlines, and everybody in India is lying about their gross domestic product. Everybody in India is lying about how good their economy is. If an 8% fuel rise is going to destroy the country. Somebody's been lying the whole time. See, the cat's kind of out of the bag. They can't tell you all this information and how bad it's going to be for everything when such a little tiny rise in the fuel price. And then suddenly their entire economy collapses because of an 8% fuel rise. Tells me somebody was fibbing the numbers all the way along. They weren't truthful with really what's going on in these countries economically. So now we're going to start to see a little more truth on the fake numbers in the stock markets or however they were playing with numbers. Because such a small, minuscule hike, they're going to now tell people immediate consequences. Read the full breakdown. Oh my gosh, India is going to collapse because of an 8% fuel hike. Be scared. And it's just like this everywhere. Slovenia, fuel rationing. Here's an interesting one too. I was looking in Germany, German fuel prices, and the UK, here it is, right off the Daily Mail. And the Brits must brace for energy rationing as Middle East chaos causes shortages. They don't show you any shortages. They just say there's shortages. There's no signs anywhere except the ones generated by AI right here. I know a ton of people in the UK, and none of them are writing me going, dude, we're out of fuel. There's signs everywhere, none. So again, this is a headline that we as Americans would read, and we're not there, so we don't exactly know what's going on. But I know at least 6, 7 people in the UK, none of them have said, hey, we're out of fuel over here. None, zero. But they're already telling the Brits to get ready. This is off the Daily Mail. Shortages apparently in South Africa. Again, people are showing photos of fuel shortages in South Africa, closed pumps, but the government says, no, it's working fine. Who's telling the truth? I don't have an answer. I'm not in South Africa. That's why I'm always looking for people in these countries. Is this really happening or not? So the Australian fuel shortage, make it a little small. Oh, March 22nd, excuse me. That was only a few days back. So just to put numbers in order here, there's 7,700 gas stations in Australia. 107 of them are out of diesel fuel. 47 of them are out of fuel. So I did the number crunch. That's 0.6% don't have any fuel. And then suddenly there's more than 500 service stations have run out of petrol or some type of the petrol. See, there we get into this gray zone again, some type of the petrol. So let's get you some numbers here. Cleverly worded to bend your mind in a different direction. I'm just going to say that. This figure comes from the official statements by the Federal Ministry of Energy about the shortages. 600 to 608 stations, roughly 8%, reported missing one type of fuel. And again, it mainly is the 100% gasoline because all the ethanol blends are still available. They were going ethanol 15, E15, like 15% ethanol in your thing. E20, the E20 blends were available. E15 blends are available. Diesel's available. What the one stations didn't have was the 100% gasoline that mainly farmers like to use in their machines if they're not running diesel, because you don't want the ethanol eating up all your rings and destroying your farm equipment. You want to use 100% gas in that. People who have mowing services use 100% gas. So those are and they make it look like every station, 600 stations out of gas. Oh my gosh, that's like almost 10%. No, it's one kind of gas. So all the other pumps are open. It's just you can't get one type. You can still get all the other types. So I'm saying it goes like this again and again and again and again. And it just story after story like this. All right, so I did dive into, I went off to ChatGPT or Grok, excuse me, and asked him, okay, across Southeast Asia, where is it really out of fuel? News reports, dive through every single news report across Southeast Asia and tell me where they're out of fuel. So I did this morning. Laos has 1,000 stations closed out of 2,500. But again, is it really closed, or the granularness of the information is not there like I would like it to be? Stations closed are out of fuel. The out of fuel didn't dissect in out of one source of fuel or completely all out of fuel for every source of fuel. Again, that's a piece of information that's very important to have. Are they missing just like the 100%? Do they have all the ethanol blends, or they have diesel? Like, that's not collated in here. So it's a very scrimpy data, but it is a data point. Substandard data in my opinion, but it's the only data I got for you. Cambodia, 364 stations closed out of 6,300. That's 5%. And here's the thing. All the news is focused on Philippines. Don't fly. You're going to run out of airlane fuel. You can't get out of here maybe. Oh my gosh, you got to get. But look at the Philippines, they're the least affected out of any of the countries. They got less than 415 stations out of 14,000 that don't have fuel or are disrupted of fuel in some way. They're the least affected, but they're getting the most news coverage of being the most affected, which is strange for me. Like everywhere I look, it's a Philippine story, Philippine story, Philippine. But here, their gas stations are the least affected. I'm surprised I don't see more about Laos or Cambodia. You would think these two would be just dominating the headlines. Oh my gosh, Laos. Almost half their gas stations are completely closed. They got no fuel in the country. I don't hear a peep. Crickets. So again, I just don't understand how the news feed's flowing or not. Some more available country data here, I guess, information feed on this one. Let's see, let me jump back here. We're going to sign out in just a minute here. It's coming on 11. I appreciate you watching. Please head over to buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. And also civilizationcycle.com. Drop in there, put your email in. I'll get you the show notes. And this is just a quick one to go through, but I wanted to finish off this last one slide here before I sign out tonight. Thank you for your valuable time. Please share this with others, because what you're seeing in the news is really twisting and mixing the facts to make it appear as if it's much worse, in my opinion, than it truly is. The way things are worded, and if you really take the time to dive in, which a lot of people don't have that time. I get it. People are busy. This is what I do for a living. So for me, I have the time, because that's what I do to generate income. So thank you so much for supporting me. So I have the time to do this research, to bring you the real facts on what's happening. Thank you for doing that, because I'm interested too in what's happening. So Thailand, 10 to 20% of stations temporarily unavailable to operate at peak demand periods. So I was reading this also. When they get a certain length of line, they just cut off the taps, because they consider it in the Thai government as hoarding at that point, where some cars are coming through a second time. They're putting out license plate readers to see how frequently you're starting to fill up fuel. So the reason for part of the delays is for them to put out license plate readers. I don't know if it's Flock, but one of them, at the petrol stations. So when you come in and you fill up your car, they're going to tag your license plate, so you don't come back again in another day or another thing, and then you siphon the gas out and put it in a tank at your house, and you come back and get 30 more gallons. They're limiting this. So this is some of the reasons. Peak operation hours, they're putting an end mark, some sort of mark at the end of how long the line can be. If it goes over that end mark, they just turn off the pumps and be like, too many people, we can't serve everybody. That's exactly what this operation at peak hours. So if you come at midnight and the gas station's still open, there's probably 5 cars there, they will fill you. But if you come and there's 300 cars waiting in line, they're like, we're not going to deal with that. We're going to run out of fuel here, so just turn it off. Tell them to go home. Tell them to come back at a different time, and we'll fill up. Just too many people, creating a scary scenario. So they kind of figured out this queue, or the length of cars, on how to service them or not, and tell everybody to scatter to the wind and then come back later when it appears less scary with less cars. So distribution fix is what they're calling it. There's a real name for it, distribution fix. Slovenia, I didn't get to Germany, but Germany the Germans are driving to Hungary to fill up their fuel because it's cheaper in Hungary. Right now, fuel in Germany is €2 per liter, which puts it at around $8 and a little over per gallon. But it's cheaper in Hungary. So the Germans are driving to Hungary, filling up their cars. But when they come back, the German police are pulling over the German drivers and saying, hey, you just filled up in Germany. You have to pay us the tax for the fuel in Germany that you didn't pay because you were sneaky and went to Hungary. So they're pulling people over on the roads now to make them pay fuel tax from buying fuel in a different country, in Germany. So this whole thing, people are driving to Slovenia. They're calling it fuel tourism, where people are driving up there to get cheaper fuel in Slovenia and Hungary. And then as they come back in their home nations, the police are there, hundreds of police at the border, just grabbing people. Pay your fuel tax, pay your fuel tax. I thought police were there to be fighting crime, not having to stop people on the road. That's internet. For me, that's interstate banditry, stopping people to demand payment to continue further. Oh, because you didn't pay a tax in this country, you went to another country. Wait a minute, I thought it was EU, it was free flow. Oh no, wait, it's not really. And overall widespread outages, but limited confirmed closures. That's the whole thing. They're talking big on the news, limited, but you can't confirm it. You just don't see it in the confirmed newspapers of legitimate journalism sources. It's just something slaps up on the social media and it gets thrown through the channels as God's truth, and it's not. So even in Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Vietnam, India, and New Zealand, there are queues, longer cars, waiting in line. Rationing, maybe, stay at home and work, but they can't confirm any of these, like not enough fuel for everybody. So this whole thing about the end of the decade goals being met with check the boxes only works if you believe that this is true. If you don't believe all this is true, then none of the plans for the end of the decade work. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of this tonight. Please share this with your friends and family. Super important discussions to have. Like, what are your plans if it really does amplify? One thing that's going to amplify is food pricing, because the fertilizer shortage is the only real thing that I've seen out of this. The rest of this is scare headlines, just trying to get you to get ready for working at home again or not driving or whatever. That's just all subset A. But what's the real deal, the elephant in the room, is the fertilizers just not being produced, and that is gigantically huge for crops. So if we don't have the fertilizer, we don't have abundant food. So that's the biggie. I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.